welcome to the Northern Planning meeting. Well, I think it's the April meeting, but we're actually still in March. So the introduction today is good afternoon. Welcome to the meeting of the Northern Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Mark Jones, Vice Chairman of the committee. I'll be chairing the meeting in the absence of Councillor Paul Wynne, who has sent his apologies because he's got COVID, or had the remnants of. So some housekeeping first. We're not expecting a fire drill today, and in the event of alarm sounding, please leave the building and gather at the front of the building. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Could I also ask you to please ensure your mobile phones are switched off and ensure the volume on your laptop is muted. To ensure the members of this committee and all points raised by the public speakers are properly heard, I must advise you that I will not tolerate any disruptive behaviour. This is a meeting held in public, not a public meeting, and if such behaviour takes place and persists, I will adjourn the meeting. Members should ensure they are present throughout the meeting, as you cannot vote on any item if you have not heard all of the debate. Can members and officers introduce themselves each time before they speak, so those listening know who is speaking? I shall now ask the members of the committee and officers to introduce themselves. So if I start to my left.
Thank you, Chair. Miranda Garrard, Solicitor.
Stephen Davenport, Councillor, St Martin, Dillson and Dillson.
Councillor Gary Butcher, Councillor for Bagley Division Street.
Councillor Vincent Malamike. Councillor Jeff Elmer, Councillor for Ellesmere Urban.
Ted Clark, Councillor for Basin Hill and a couple of other places.
Councillor Dave Basberg, Councillor Underdale.
Councillor Edward Towers, Banbury and Wixel.
Mike Ishwood, Councillor for Oswestry West.
Councillor Matt Green, Quarry and Coates and Hill. Okay, thank you all for that. And the planning officer is here at the front.
Kelvin Hall, Principal Planner.
Shannon Franklin, Technical Specialist Planning Officer.
And Philip Molyneux, Principal Planner.
Okay, thank you. So first item on the agenda, you don't want me to introduce anybody else? Apologies for absence. So they received obviously from Paul Wynne, Councillor Joyce Barrow, and thankfully Steve Davenport is substituting. Councillor Alex Wagner can't attend, so Nat Green is substituting for him. Second item on the agenda is minutes, to confirm the minutes from the meeting held on the 1st of March 2022. Could I have anybody from, so I've got Councillor Burchett and Councillor Hunt, who was first and second them. So we need to vote on that. Everybody in favour, hold your hand up. Thank you. Public questions, we haven't received any of those. I presume nobody wants to speak at the back now, we'll wait until later. Disclosable pecuniary interest. Has anybody got any pecuniary interests in any matter arising today? Nobody's saying a word, so I presume we're all okay. So the first major item on the list is item 5, which is the land north of Bastchurch, Shropshire. And I think Shannon is introducing. So Shannon, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you very much. The application seeks planning permission for 20 affordable dwellings outside the development boundary to the north of Bastchurch. The application is submitted as an exception site. So first, I'm just going to run you through the submitted plans. So if we just go on to the first slide, please. This is the location plan of the site with the area hatched in red, subject to the application. And then next one, please. This is the site plan for the application, showing the 3 parcels of public open space, and then the dwellings are located to the north side of the singular access point. And next one, please. And then we've got the house types for some of the plots. I'll run through, there's 4 different types on here, so this is the first one. The next, please. Second house type. Next, please. And a set of semis, and next please. And these are the bungalows. And next one, please. Another type of bungalow that's on this site. And then next, please. This is a street scene that's been prepared by the agent just to show the development on the site looking across it. So the bottom row would be to the far left, to the west as you're looking at it. And then the top row you can just see on the very edge of the page is Stony Yard, which is an existing dwelling to the neighbouring of the site. So that's how that street scene shows. And then the next slide, please. This is one half of the landscaping scheme of the site, which predominantly proposes native species hedging, and then there is some post and rail fencing to the externals of the site, and internally there will be some close boarded fencing where necessary for privacy. Next slide, please. This is the other half of the site going up to the boundary with the existing development to the east, which is Stony Yard. Again, same principles. Next slide, please. A number of members have done a site visit this morning, so I've just included a couple of photographs just to remind you of that. So this is, the top one is a Google Earth image because my image was taken on a rather cloudy day, so it wasn't as good. So we are looking, in these photos, we are looking east towards Stony Yard, which is the existing neighbouring development. You can just see the edges of those houses in the photos. And then next, please. And then the top left is a plan submitted by the applicant, which highlights what they consider to be the built form of Bashchurch, where there is existing built development. And then the bottom right is basically taken from the council's own mapping system. Anything hatched in yellow is what we consider to be curtilage to residential gardens. So it's just so you can see that those two are very similar. I have sketched the site on in red on that plan, so it's not millimetre perfect, but it's roughly there. And then, is there one more slide? I'm not sure. No, go back to that last one then, please. Okay, so I'll just talk you through the application. Officers are recommending for approval of the application subject to a Section 106 agreement, which secures the affordable housing in perpetuity and the highways improvements proposed. The Section 106 will need to refer to the highways improvements, as the developer will pay Shropshire Council to implement the improvements under a traffic regulation order. So that's why highways are in Section 106 specifically. Should the committee resolve to approve the application, the recommendation is for the decision to be delegated to officers to prepare the Section 106 and amend the conditions as necessary. Condition 3 and 4 specifically, which refer to the highways improvements that are in Appendix 1 for you, will need to be amended in consultation with the legal team to agree appropriate wording, but their effect in securing the highways improvements will remain the same. Running through the application then, officers consider that the application site meets the tests of the exception criteria set down in policy CS5, and that the benefits of the proposal outweigh the harms sufficiently to warrant an approval. The site over-provides on public open space, provides a mix of dwellings from 1-bedroom bungalows to 3-bedroom houses, a mix which is in need locally, and provides a landscaping scheme with rural characteristics suitable for the edge of settlement. Concerns have been raised in relation to safe sustainability. However, the site is within walking distance of no more than 1.5 kilometres to the school, shops and doctors within Bashchurch. The site would score positively in terms of social sustainability due to affordable housing provision, neutrally in terms of economic sustainability, and neutrally in terms of environmental sustainability. The initial concerns over highways have been sufficiently addressed through additional traffic surveys undertaken on site and submission of revised plans. Improvements to the highways network, including speed reduction, improved pedestrian footpaths, and an improved pedestrian crossing, will be secured as part of the development through conditions in the Section 106 agreement I referred to earlier. The Shropshire Council Affordable Housing team have commented in support of the application. Whilst I do note that residents, the parish council and local member have raised concerns during the application about the amount of development ongoing in Bashchurch, including affordable home provision, there remains an identified need for affordable housing here. Across Bashchurch, there were approximately 60 affordable dwellings on the stock list in 2021. In considering the 20 dwellings proposed in this application and the adjacent Stony Yard, which is an existing development for 20 affordable dwellings, it's not considered that the affordable dwellings in this parcel of development would dominate the neighbouring open market dwellings nor the overall settlement given its size. It should be noted that the affordable dwellings on the adjacent Stony Yard are mixed tenure, so that's shared ownership, affordable rent and affordable sale, and the application site will be similar. Shropshire Council Affordable Housing have confirmed a policy compliant tenure mix would be 70% affordable rent and 30% low cost home ownership is their preference, and the applicant has agreed to provide 14 dwellings for affordable rent and 6 dwellings for low cost home ownership. So there will be a mix of tenure, although all will be affordable housing secured in perpetuity. The latest need figures we have available for affordable housing need in Bashchurch is that 36 households are on the register requesting an affordable home. As this is an exception site, we can only look at those persons with 2 local connections to identify the need for this specific development. This would bring the number down to 27 households currently on the housing register needing an affordable home in Bashchurch and qualifying for an exception site having 2 local connections. A further query that's been raised by the parish council and local member referred to in some of the comments made was in relation to an appeal decision which was made on an outline scheme for affordable dwellings. That outline scheme was located to the north of Stony Yard. So where our application site is, to the immediate right, looking at the screen, there is a cluster of houses in yellow. The site that was considered at the appeal was to the north of that. Tim's just indicating with the mouse, and it protruded. It was that, and then slightly further north into the field above. Just to clarify where this appeal is. The inspector noted in that appeal, as has been pointed out in the parish council's comments, that it would introduce a form of nucleated development out of kilter with the existing arrangement. There'd be harm to character, and it would interrupt the prevailing pastoral landscape and run counter to the linear pattern of development characteristic of this part of the village. So officers have taken this into account when we've reached our conclusion to this application. In considering the application before the committee, we do not think that it results in the same harms as that appeal decision. The application we're considering follows the linear pattern of development noted by the inspector. It doesn't encroach further north than the existing building line formed by Stony Yard. It is adjacent to the recognised settlement boundary, which was a key reason the principle of that appeal wasn't accepted by the inspector. We consider that it does respond to the form and layout of the existing development required by policy MD2, and the views when approaching Bashchurch, particularly from the north, will continue to encompass linear development along the B4397, which is very similar to the current scenario. So we don't think that you could justify this is demonstrably different character. Additionally, the modest hedging to the field's wider boundaries wouldn't be interrupted by the development, which is something that was happening in that previous appeal. And coupled with the landscaping scheme that's been brought forward, we think that will assist in reducing any residual prominence from those viewpoints that the inspector took consideration from. So just to conclude, subject to the imposition of a Section 106 securing the affordable housing in perpetuity, together with those highways improvements and the conditions in Appendix 1, officers consider that the site is acceptable in principle as an exception site for affordable housing, and that the limited harms we've identified do not constitute a reason for refusal. The need for affordable housing within the locality has been established and represents a significant benefit in favour of the application, which we consider demonstrably outweighs those residual harms. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sharon. That was excellent. So now we've got 3 speakers on this subject. So we've got Councillor Steve Gregory from the Bashchurch Parish Council, then Nick Farsley, and then Scott Drummond is the agent. So if Steve has got a microphone there, we haven't got a clock on the screen, but Miranda will tell you when you've got 3 minutes. And Miranda will tell you when you've only got 30 seconds left. So you're on time, Steve.
Okay.
So Church Parish Council has objected to this and other unsuccessful applications in this location for a number of years, and we remain convinced that this application doesn't deliver homes in a good or sustainable location. So 1.5 kilometres, which was quoted, is quite a distance if you struggle to get to the doctor's surgery, which is the other end of Bath Church. The application for 20 homes located next to an existing site, we believe that the cumulative impact of these dwellings located on the furthest periphery of the village will deliver dwellings that are isolated and not part of the village amenities or community. Planning officers and national policy agree that affordable dwellings work best when they are pepper potted, i.e. integrated with open market dwellings rather than isolated. People living in affordable dwellings have the same right to live in somewhere that they are proud of and feel included in, and part of their local community where they feel safe and happy. And we feel that there's sufficient other parts of Bath Church where there is part of the existing plan such developments could take place. In dismissing the appeal on another site, which was referenced earlier, the planning inspector identified the harm that this type of development will cause in this location, stating that it would introduce a nucleated form of development which would be out of kilter with the existing arrangements and be significantly harmful to the character and appearance of the area, contrary to Sanddare Policy MD2. And whilst that was just referenced, if you are coming from Western Longfield, actually it does obscure the view of the Bath Church Parish, the church. So there are some things that it does negatively impact upon. Bath Church Parish Council agrees that affordable homes are needed. The difference that perhaps we would concur compared to what was mentioned is that we believe that there are currently, in the process of being constructed, a further 44 affordable homes, and we're also in discussions to boost this by another 10. So we don't disagree fundamentally on the numbers, but we believe that within the existing developments that are taking place and the land that is already allocated as part of the plan, that those numbers can be also reached. So what we're saying is, we remind you that the site is in open countryside, and whilst there was an exception site which was referenced on the map behind you, we believe that it's a commuter road that colleagues that came today have seen, and it's very busy, very noisy. It's a very narrow footpath actually outside the existing development, and the proposal doesn't integrate with the existing area of Bath Church.
Okay, thank you, Steve. You just did that within the time limit. That's grand. Next up is the local member, Councillor Nick Barnsley. He's actually got 5 minutes, but more doesn't equal, sometimes less equals more. So keep it brief. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to touch on points which are perhaps not emphasised in the statement you've had from the Parish Council. Can I start off quickly with highways? Those of you who were at the site visit this morning will have seen how busy that B4397 is. It might be a B road, but it's pretty busy even at a quiet time of day. If you were here, if you were on that road in the early morning or in the afternoon during the rush hour, you'd see how busy it really gets. It's part of the Ryton 11 Towns Bath Church Walford rat run for drivers trying to get from the A5 to Harscote and Battlefield, and it has been for a long time. Every year it gets worse. The suggested conditions, which took a very, very long time to sort out, I think that's symptomatic of how difficult this site is from the development management point of view. It's not straightforward, and I would suggest some of those conditions will actually be quite difficult to implement and even more difficult to enforce. That B4397, if you're coming from Ryton 11 Towns, is the first bit of straight stretch you've got. You come up the bank from the River Perry, and there it is. There's a mile or so and you put your foot down, people are bombing into the present 60-mile-an-hour limit, the present 40-mile-an-hour, and they don't slow down from the 60. I think it will be extremely difficult to enforce a 30 in that location. Picking up very quickly on the visibility from the north, I think the point was made very well by Councillor Steve Gregory, and it's specifically referred to in the appeal decision from 2016, that the visibility would be completely lost. In my view, at the moment it's a pleasant vista of open countryside, and instead of which there's going to be housing, not all bungalows, and it will impact on that visibility. Please consider, members, very carefully the 2021 St Martin's application and the reasons given by your officers for refusal, and ask yourself, why don't they apply to this application? Because they are remarkably similar. Nobody disputes that there is a need for affordable housing. We particularly need bungalows. And if instead of this application, we had proposals for 20 pepper potted houses integrated into market housing developments, that's been the pattern in recent years in Bastchurch, and very successfully too. There's no shortage of building land in Bastchurch, as everybody knows who lives or drives through it. It's nice, flat, easy countryside, and the planners cheerfully allocate additional land, and the parish council is very collaborative, cooperative with that development proposal. If we were looking at development somewhere near the existing shop, the doctor's surgery, or the 2 schools, I think the parish council and I would have been enthusiastic supporters. Sadly, this application ticks none of those boxes. Much too far away from services, as Steve Gregory has said, and frankly, it's creating a bit of a ghetto. I thought the days of building council housing estates on the edge of our villages and towns were long gone. Why is it a great idea to build an estate of 40 affordable dwellings? Yep, mixed tenure, I accept that. On the outskirts of Bastchurch, it's harking back to the developments of the last century.
30 seconds.
Bastchurch, frankly, doesn't want or need this development. I think the harm very much outweighs the benefit. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Nick. You were 10 seconds short, but we'll talk that against you. The next one we've got is Scott Drummond. He's for it, so this will be interesting.
Thank you. Good afternoon, committee, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk. My name is Scott Drummond. I work for TC Homes. We're a local housing developer. We work alongside housing associations to bring affordable sites forward. This application is a rural exception site of 20 units, including bungalows and houses. Tenure mix will be policy compliant at 70% affordable rent and 30% low cost home ownership. TC Homes work closely with the council's enabling team, and they have confirmed that there are 38 houses on the register, and of those 27 have at least 2 connections. Before this application was submitted, TC Homes visited Bastchurch Parish Council on several occasions to talk about affordable housing and the demand they have. TC Homes collated information on several pieces of land, however they were undevelopable due to covenants or landowners holding out for open market. We went back to the parish with our findings to seek support, however this was unachievable over several meetings. Bastchurch is a sustainable location with good transport links to Shropshire and wider afield, including a regular bus service. It also has local shops, post office, school and sports facilities. The site is adjoining the development boundary and has housing immediately to the east and south and pedestrian connectivity. The site is actually closer to the village's shops and services than recent built open market sites of Shingler Homes and Galliers. The access point to the site has been carefully considered and has maximum visibility space to the east and west. Our intention would be to upgrade and widen the existing footway to the east. This will not only give the proposed development good pedestrian access, but will also be a benefit for the whole village. We propose extending the existing street lighting, resulting in an automatic extension of the 30-mile-an-hour zone, benefiting the whole village and reducing speeds down the road. The site has been designed to give road frontage elevations in a linear fashion so that it creates a design-led gateway to the village. With a mix of houses and bungalows that are set at national design space standards, the site will cater for small and large families, and bungalows will offer some much needed level access accommodation. The site also offers areas of public open space for the development and the existing residents to enjoy. In summary, this is an affordable site designed for the local people. It is a sustainable location with village enhancing benefits. There is a recommendation for approval with all consultees' recommendation for approval, including highways, trees, ecology and archaeological. There is proven demand from the council's figures. With the uncertainty of cost of living rising and inflation, we believe now more than ever is affordable housing needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent. All good speakers, so thank you all for your speaking. So the floor is open. Anybody want to debate this issue? So we've got David Vansford, Councillor David Vansford.
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to ask a few questions first about this development and the appendix, the conditions being imposed. And I wondered if any consideration has been given to encouraging cyclists to go into the village. I noticed a reference to pedestrian, making it easier for pedestrians and a crossing. But there's no mention of cycling at all. And I wondered if that had been considered and whether within the conditions some provision to be made for that.
Is it just the one query, David, or is there more?
I've got some more, but perhaps answer that one first.
In terms of how we consider sustainable transport, as a general rule of thumb, and this does obviously depend on site specifics, we'd expect people to be able to walk approximately 2 kilometres and cycle 5 kilometres. Obviously, this site doesn't make any particular arrangements for cycle paths. However, each of the properties does have sufficient amenity space to provide their own cycle storage, be that through a shed or just secure locking within their curtilages. And that is something that we encourage all developers to take account of. It often goes on as an informative, but it isn't something that we condition under our current policy, because our current policy isn't strong enough, isn't specific enough to put that on as a condition. It is something that we inform developers of. The other thing that I would point out is in terms of the highways improvements that are proposed, they're not specifically catering to cyclists, but obviously, again, sustainable transport mechanisms, either cycling into the village and gaining access to other transport or walking into the village. The proposals include widening of the pedestrian footpath, improvement of the pedestrian crossing, the implementation of the street lighting, which was referred to by the agent, and then a reduction of that speed. All of those things do something that in highways and planning terms is referred to as creating an active frontage. The more active the frontage is, it essentially encourages drivers to slow down. So that's all part of those improvements. So while I can't specifically say this is for cycling purposes, it's all part of that consideration of highways improvements and sustainable, and whether we consider this location to be sustainable.
Yeah, so the crossing, for example.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Oh, can we have, we'll go to Steve Davenport, we'll come back to you later, is that okay?
Yes, I'm pleased I went to this site visit because again it's one of those that you have to be on site to see and to understand, although I know the lie of the land. But I've got to agree with the parish council, who I always agree with town parish councils because they're the people on the ground at that time. I think this, well, it's clearly an exception site, and it's an exception in the wrong position. It was, again, the site behind the houses there at the moment that come out on the lane, and I can't remember the name of that lane. Apparently that went in 2016, an application to appeal, and it was rejected at appeal. But that particular site looks far, far better. I know we can only determine the site we're on now, but that particular site that got turned down and refused to appeal was far better to be extended from the house there at the moment. So I really would be against this. It's good quality farming land, flat. The parish council, the local member is against this. It just feels wrong. It just feels wrong, and there could be a better place within the village. Thank you.
Excellent. Councillor Gary Burchett's up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Gary Burchett. My concern is similar to Councillor Davenport's. Having visited the site today, it's the placing of the new hedgerow behind this site, the extra access road within the site leading to the land behind, and the small amount of land left at the end before the next lane. It may not have been accepted now, but it's been set up as a way of getting into the land for future developments. I'd also like to see, if possible, on the plan, if we could see it on the LDP boundaries for Bastchurch as it stands right now, and why aren't we ensuring they get filled in first before we do exceptions?
Okay, you happy to answer that now, Sharon?
Yeah, I can. I'll sort of come back on what's been mentioned so far, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of the development boundary that we have, there are 4 allocated sites within Bastchurch under the current local plan, 3 of which have been constructed. 1 had 4 affordable dwellings on the site, 1 had 6, 1 had 4. And then if you look at this plan, you can just see at the top here there is there's a field to the corner. There's an allocated site up there as well, which also has outline planning permission and that and reserve matters, and that has 8 affordable dwellings on that site. Those are the only ones that haven't been constructed that I'm aware of at the moment that have planning permission. So the other houses, the other affordable houses within the development boundary that have been constructed already contribute to this, as far as I'm aware, already contribute to the 60 stock that we have, with the remaining 36 persons on the list. There has been extensive work as part of the local plan review, looking into various other sites within the development boundary. The point of development boundaries is that they're in general drawn quite tight to the development that's there already. So, you know, we have to consider this site would only be acceptable for affordable housing or other development which meets that set down in the exceptions test of CS5, and it is. I'm going to hop on to that appeal decision that we keep referring to. That appeal decision was that this principal objection reason for that appeal decision was because it did not sit adjacent to the boundary of the development of Bastchurch. The Stony Yard development, the existing one immediately adjacent to this site, that is outside the development boundary because it was granted as an exception site. So the site to the north can't be brought forward as a development because A, it doesn't spatially meet the requirement to be adjacent to the settlement boundary. And then those additional reasons that the inspector highlighted, that application site didn't have an appropriate section 106, for example, didn't provide sufficient public open space, and then there was the issues with character and creating this sprawl along the lane to the north. This application site, you know, planning officers would say is demonstrably different in that it is the same pattern as existing. I think there was also a mention of an application in St Martin's. I'm going to look for a nod purely because I'm checking up it's the right one. Was that in Street Dinas for 3 affordable dwellings?
Yes. Yes.
That's the one that you're referring to. That was actually my application. So Street Dinas is not a community hub, it's a community cluster where only affordable dwellings where limited infilling is acceptable. It doesn't have a defined development boundary. It is essentially...
Well, there's no affordable housing in that area, and that was a application for 3 affordable housing.
Anyway, should we keep to the topic we're on, please?
Correct, but the 2 sites don't translate. It wasn't adjacent to a development boundary. Again, it was the application had a number of things information omitted from it, and it didn't comply with the settlement guideline, which was limited infilling. So the two applications don't translate directly. I think, Philip, did you want to make a comment on anything else?
I just wanted to make it very clear about the site boundary. This site is policy compliant. The site that is listed on appeal does not adjoin a development boundary. Now, that was a fundamental issue of concern as to why the appeal was dismissed, because it was an add-on to an exception site like this one, which is in the front. And then that touches on to why we consider it appropriate location as well, with walking and cycling, because we consider it's within walking distance, never mind cycling distance. And so a sustainable location as far as the boundary is concerned. And I share the case officer's concerns with regarding the site of Council Davenport's seat, because that site was not comparable in that it does not adjoin an existing development boundary. And that's the key issue here. This site does.
Okay, thank you for that, Philip. We've got David Basner next, Councillor David Basner next, and then Councillor Mike Isherwood. Well, I would like every councillor to have a voice on this, so get ready for me to come to you, Ted.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to say that there's a crisis in the countryside, and there's a crisis because of the lack of affordable housing. And I think that on the basis of the arguments I've heard so far, I think the need for affordable housing outweighs the problems of this site being outside the development boundary. And also, I think that it is uniquely, I think, better than other sites I've seen because it is adjacent to existing development. It is, opposite the development. You can be very quickly within the village. It will also benefit the village in terms of providing proper controls on speed and improving facilities for pedestrians and cyclists. So overall, I think that we should be voting in favour of this development. I do not think that visibility is an issue here because I had a look today. And as far as I can see, given the flat nature of the land in that area, I don't think that this will obscure the view of the church, for example, and Bass Church as a whole. I don't think it will make a great deal of difference. The bus service is very close by, and I think again for some houses, affordable housing, I think that is very, very useful. So on the whole, I think given weighing up everything that I've heard so far, I think we should be supporting Officer's recommendation on this and voting in favour.
Okay, thank you, David. I'll take that proposal, but there's Mike Isherwood next, and then Vince, and then I'll go to Ted, Jeff Valner, and Ed Towers behind him afterwards. So, Mike, thank you.
Yeah, I'll second Councillor Vasmer in recommending that we give consent to this planning application. He covered most of what I was going to say. Having visited site this morning, I think it'll be a very low density development which goes in its favour. I think the need for affordable housing does outweigh all the harms or all the potential disadvantages of the site, and I think it would be a very pleasant place to live. I think the conditions address the need for improvements to the highway, and it is sustainable in that it is within easy walking distance of the vast majority of the amenities within the village. And so I think on balance, I would be in favour of this also. So I second the proposal.
Thank you, Mike. So we'll go to Vince. Councillor Vincent, please.
Thanks, Chair. I didn't go on site visits or other meetings, but I am very well acquainted with this because I used to do a monthly inspection of one of our children's homes, and that was the route that I used to take to be able to do that. My initial thoughts on this are that I'm not a fan of building on open countryside and outside the development boundary. If we're going to do that, then really what's the point in having development boundaries? But I'm also sympathetic to the fact that sometimes the need outweighs the potential damage. I can understand the planning inspector not allowing building behind it. It would become almost a housing herniation, for want of a better word. I mean, you can see there that there is linear development along that side of the road, and there is a disconnection between the piece that we can see on the right of the red area and the small piece that we can see on the end there. I think that on balance, I'm going to support this, and I'm going to have to support it because I think were we to throw this out, we would lose the appeal, frankly. The NWPF paragraph 78, I think the NWPF does make very clear that where there is a housing need, and we know that there is, our own council identified that, outweighs the right to turn this down. I am concerned about the road, and I hope the engineering measures will be robust, and I hope that drivers follow the speed limit, although we know that people don't do that. Nevertheless, if we worked on the principle that people were going to follow the speed limit or not follow the speed limit, we'd never build anywhere. I'm going to support this. I don't think we would have a chance in hell of defending this, frankly, an appeal. The homes are needed, and to be perfectly honest with you, we're going into difficult times, and if I was waiting with my family to put a roof over my head, and I lived in that area, and we know that some of those houses in perpetuity will be for people who live locally, people who lived in that village, possibly coming from families who've been there for many, many years, then it would be desirable to them. I do like pepper potting. I don't like particularly creating ghettos, but I don't think this does create a ghetto. Ghettos tend to be the things you get in urban areas. They don't tend to be things that you get in the countryside. You might get the odd one road family, but that happens anywhere. So I'm going to support this reluctantly. As I say, I'm not a fan of going outside the development boundary, but I think in this instance it's necessary. There is a need, and I don't think because of paragraph 78 at the end of the PF we would be able to defend if it was refused.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hunt. I'll go to Councillor Ted Clark, and then Nat Green, sorry I missed you at the back, and then I'll come back to Ed Towers and Jeff, and then Gary Birchett wanted another go at the front, and then I think we'll close the debate after that. Ted.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Ted Clark. I was quite happy to remain mute, which seems to be the name of the game these days. But I do share virtually entirely the comments and the attitude of the last speaker. I also share concerns about moving over development boundaries, but this particular case looks to be manageable, and certainly I think that if we were to refuse it, the matter would go to appeal, and I don't think we'd have any grounds for actually defending that in any strong way. But if I could, so I reluctantly again do support it. If I could say, the one thing that is impressive is that the Bashchurch Parish Council, despite their concerns about this particular site, I think the thing that is refreshing is that we've got a parish council that are quite constructive in terms of development generally. Their attitude towards development and affordable housing, I think is commendable, really, to be honest. Too many parishes just close shop and hope it's not going to happen. Okay,
thank you. Councillor Nat Green, did you want to say anything, or are you happy to?
Just very briefly, although I wasn't on the site visit, I do actually know that stretch of road, so I am acquainted with it. Yes, just to echo what's just been recently said, it would be impossible to defend this appeal. I think I think there's a very strong case here for this sort of limited development, just going over the development boundary. And while no site is ideal, I think it is actually ticking many of the development boxes that are, essential in this. So I will be supporting this.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ed Towers, have you any comments?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I concur, I think,
I think it went to the site this morning, and I think this is very finely balanced. And I feel like Councillor Clark, the parish council impressed me in all the notes I've seen by their forward thinking and their supportive attitude and their being proactive. Just a great place to be on parish council. And the local member expressed the concerns well of the area. But and being a farmer, so I'm concerned about green land being ploughed up and built on. But having heard the debate and having listened to the needs for local affordable homes, I would like to see a map actually of the whole of Bass Church with the bits in that our brownfield or pepper potting could have taken place. That isn't evident. I think that this is a better one. I think Councillor Bid's summarised quite a lot of what I was thinking at this point. It wasn't right in the previous place. The inspector was right. This is better. I know this gives access to further development down there. I can see it coming down the line, and we'll have to answer that when it comes and say no if necessary. This seems to have just ticked the box and made it right. One thing I'm concerned about, amongst all things, is the road. It is busy, and we didn't see it its worst today. I would like something in this agreement, if we pass it, to make this